Welcome to the e-commerce growth show, brought to you by Segmentify, the fast, lean learning machine, the fastest learning, most revenue generating personalization platform for e-commerce.
Welcome to the e-commerce growth show. Well, it's another lovely hot day today, and actually I had night number 2 in the tent last night. Kids were a little bit better, and I always fall asleep when I put them to sleep, so I actually ended up going to bed by about 9 and woke up at 5:30 this morning, and now I'm getting a feeling for how the kids feel at that time of the morning when they kind of usually jump into my bedroom and jump all over me. I actually felt pretty fresh this morning, so 5:30 I was up, getting the breakfast, so all good. Anyway, so this channel is, as you know, all about helping e-commerce retailers grow their business, grow more revenue. But also we've had the honor, as you know, to support those who have been a little bit affected by COVID. And I have the pleasure of introducing a lady called Natalie James, who is runs a consulting company called eConceptConsulting. Has been in business for about 5 years, specializing in consumer packaged goods, which, as I know now, CPGs is what I learned from Rachel Pride the other day. Those things that are basically lining the aisles of the supermarkets, from tea bags to hygiene goods or whatever. Actually, Natalie at the moment is in Biarritz, of all places. I can think of worse places to be. Blistering heat, I believe, and waiting to come home. And her husband works for Quicksilver. So they're waiting to relocate back to the UK. But I'm super excited to introduce Natalie. Hello, Natalie.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Good to speak to you today.
Yeah, not at all. And I hear the weather's great over there as well, right?
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous at the moment. We've been really lucky, like I think you guys have over in the UK as well. Had gorgeous sunshine, which makes a huge difference to the day.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start with you sort of telling us a little bit about something about yourself. And you mentioned maybe to ask you about a challenge you've overcome in the last sort of 12 months, probably related to Brits, right?
Yeah, sure. I think it's funny. We had this, as you mentioned just earlier. So coming up to 3 years ago, my family and I had the opportunity with my husband's work to move over to Biarritz. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know where it was. And I know. And little did I know at the time, it's actually Europe's surf capital, hence obviously Quicksilver being here. It's an awesome place to live and work. But yeah, we sort of thought we'd go ahead with it and give it throw ourselves into it. But one of the biggest challenges we decided to go after was to take up the chance to learn to surf, of course.
Absolutely.
So it's not something I've ever done before, and certainly wasn't something I was planning on doing. But lo and behold, I think I sort of pulled together a group of other girls in the area, and we with an instructor, and then we decided to try and learn as quickly as possible. And so we went out for sort of 6 months, weather permitting, whenever we could. And I was battered by waves and face planted and fell in like numerous times. But now I can finally say I can catch a wave by myself.
Amazing.
Definitely one of the hardest challenges I think I've ever faced. The language and the culture's one thing, but that was just on a different scale. So I have total respect for pro surfers, because it's really difficult.
I know. Tell me about it. I've never had that opportunity, so I'm a bit gutted actually. But on and off for like decades, I've gone down to Devon in our little caravan down in Bratton Fleming, and tried weather permitting, which is like twice a year or something, when I need these perfect like conditions of 3 foot clean to do anything. So I've still, after all these years, I've still got the a 7 foot half foam, half epoxy board, and I still can't carve on it, but I can just about get up and have a bit of a laugh. But I'm still determined to actually like do a wave properly today. But I still haven't nailed it yet. So when you come back over, I need to sort of knock on your door and get some tips. So maybe you can take me out on the waves, right? Give me some lessons. Yeah, right. Oh, fantastic. So Anyway, moving on to the sort of overarching theme of today's chat,
Yeah.
I'm really interested to talk to you about this, obviously from your expertise from a consulting perspective, but
Mhm.
you picked up on this thing which is really interesting and I think very relevant for the moment, which
Mhm.
is all about the older generation of shoppers. And this kind of cohort, this demographic of people who probably historically haven't really had to do a lot or had much inclination to buy online,
Yeah.
all of a sudden found themselves through COVID and the lockdowns and so on, forced online.
Mhm.
And so, in the kind of in the wake of the fact that lockdowns, I don't believe are going to go away anytime
Mm.
soon. You know, it could be cyclical. You know, in the sense of
Yeah.
maybe managing COVID on a long term basis,
Mhm.
or even if it isn't, online buyers, you know, from that generation are now going to be buying online. You were kind of mentioning that there might well be a gap in the way in which brands are serving that particular demographic. And so the question really was like, how can we, what can we, or what should we be doing to provide a better experience in terms of looking after those guys, keeping them, retaining them, and growing that particular base of customers?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So,
So, yeah,
sorry, I interrupted you then. Go on.
no, go for it. I was just going to say, tell us, you know, kind of from a summary point of view, absolutely.
You summarised it really well there, and I think it's probably stemmed from me speaking probably to my own sort of relatives, family members, and obviously just doing a
Yeah.
bit of research online that these people have been faced with a 3-month lockdown, and it's been really
Sure.
quite scary for them. And like you said, they've been forced to shop online, whereas they've probably been a little bit concerned
Hmm.
about doing that, and
Yeah.
it's pushed them into a new shopping habit. And I genuinely
Hmm.
don't believe that when this lockdown is
Yeah.
lifted after 3 months, I know for certain my mother won't be,
Yeah.
will just be, flinging open the door and
Yeah.
going straight to her nearest supermarket. There's still going to be a lot of concern there. So it's really important that
Yeah. Yeah.
we we sort of look at how all the different online platforms and how brands, what can they
Mm.
doing differently, like you said, to
Yeah.
nurture those new client base, because this won't
Mm.
necessarily be something that had been even considered or built into any previous strategies.
No. No, makes complete sense. So we had chatted briefly about a few specific areas that you wanted to home in on that you believe you've picked up as a consultant that would be interesting to talk about.
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, if we start with online security, for example, what are your thoughts around that area?
Yeah, and I mean, it'll be interesting as well. As I'm sure if
Yeah,
you spoke to any relatives or whatever, that I find, and
yeah,
again, just from reading some articles and things online, one of the biggest shopping
yeah,
barriers for the sort of over 70s generation for shopping online
mm,
is their
mm,
security of their bank details.
yeah,
There's still a lot of uncertainty about how secure are these websites, how secure are my bank details going to be. They're
yeah,
absolutely scared about their details being stolen and sold on, etc. So I'm sort of thinking here about
yeah,
what could they be doing, differently to help communicate to them about increasing levels of security for them.
yeah. No, that makes complete sense. I know my mum at the moment; she's still going down to Morrison's. You know, it would be that whole. I mean, even for me, you
Mm.
know, I still don't shop on a mobile. I mean, because and I'm only 46, like, but I still would go onto my laptop ridiculously. And I know my wife now is just about sort of doing the Tesco, these, you know, finding an online slot
Yeah.
through some underground network of, hey, there's a slot available, and going on, going on and going on to get in the shop and doing that on the mobile.
Yeah.
But let alone the likes of you say my mum or whoever,
Mhm.
and the mindset around that for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then what about things like setting up accounts, checking out, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of remember that for the likes of me, that I'm an avid online shopper. I do direct to consumer, I do
Mm,
online shopping for grocery, etc. Setting up an account and checking out, I don't even think about it. And a lot of platforms have made it really, really
yeah,
simple and easy. But again, for the likes of that sort of slightly older generation that's just adopting this new way of shopping, what could we be doing to help them, to reassure them and give them that support? So, for example, setting up an online account, it might be good to have an actual telephone support line where they could walk them through the steps, and also giving them that reassurance that it is an actual store and an actual person. It's not anything fraudulent. And then also when it comes to the checkout, this is this barrier of their bank details and things. Is there potentially an option where they do their food shop online, and then if they'd like the option, they could actually ring through to an actual customer service line and pay online that way. Again, it's removing these barriers, creating that level of reassurance to really nurture this new customer base.
Yeah, no, sure. And another area that we were talking about was delivery. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, again, if you're thinking about, a person that's living by themselves, that's been in lockdown for a few months, it's going to be, again, how do you reassure them that the person that is going to be delivering the products, or coming on the day? So can we make sure we provide them with the delivery driver's name? I do know some platforms do this well already, but providing them with an SMS reminder, all these sorts of things just to break down the barriers and reassure them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense as well, completely. So, I mean, talking about the transition between the services that groceries, CPGs do in store, if you like.
Yeah.
How have you got any thoughts about how they can be transitioned, if you like, to the online environment to kind of almost make it, improve the sort of similarity, if you like, between the two?
Yeah, and I mean, this is one that supermarkets were really keen on pushing, and to drive footfall in store, was providing a whole load of extra services in their supermarkets. It's worked really, really well. But obviously, as I said, things have changed. So I don't have the answer for how this would work, and I do appreciate the logistics can be pretty tricky, but is there a way in which we can bring some of those in-store services, things like dry cleaning or, mobile phone support and things like that, how do we bring that to their doorstep as well, and really provide that multi-channel service for them?
Yeah, that's interesting. And then there's the whole communication piece, right? So what are your thoughts around how to communicate better, if you like?
Sure. This is
people?
probably one of the biggest ones for me as well. So we've talked about the other bits around reassuring them on online security, and how do we give them support with setting up an account and checking out, and improving communication on delivery and servicing, etc. But the big bit for me that I think really needs a lot of focus is looking at how do you adapt your digital marketing to really talk to these shoppers, and using the language that they that they can relate to and that's relevant to them, and how do you communicate your promotions and what promotions are offered? So these are sorts of things that, when you were creating your strategies, as I said, back in 2019, wouldn't really have been considered or built into, and still in some businesses, not all of them, but some businesses, e-commerce was still a kind of afterthought. And so it really is here, like, okay, this is the time where online is at the forefront, and it's a new change of market dynamics. So how can digital marketeers change the way in which they talk to this new shopper base? And I think for me, it's going to have to, you can't just do it in isolation. These sorts of things you're going to have to pick up with your retailers and your pure play customers, because you're going to need to brainstorm these things together cross-functionally with your internal teams and your external teams, where you can try and, you need to pull together these new initiatives, these new plans, so that you can implement them efficiently and quickly. Because I think this has taken, as you know, everybody by surprise. And so it's really important that you react quickly and we work smartly together. But yeah, that digital marketing piece for me is a real fundamental area that people need to look at.
Yeah. And have you got any sort of thoughts or examples on the actual practicality of that? What type of messaging, what type of channels, what sort of routes to market, if you like, almost, that would be relevant to that demographic?
Yeah, well, I think again, if you sort of help them through the whole setting up and the telephone support, etc., and you've then got you can email them and SMS them. To me, I think a really good way to approach it would be through that tailorization, the personalized digital marketing, making sure that you understand this sort of new group of shoppers, understand the things that are relevant to them. So I imagine, for example, I know price is always important, but these people are going to be particularly self-conscious in terms of their budget that they're going to have to spend. And they're going to be looking at how they can stretch out their food shop. So looking at what sort of promotions are you offering them. So looking at more bulk packs, bigger packs, maybe offering more economy pack size of things, and then using the right sort of language in terms of how you communicate that to them. So if you can do that by personalizing direct email and SMS messaging to them, I think that's probably a really good way to win those customers over and nurture them for the future, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about it now because I don't know how savvy that generation is in terms of email, particularly. I'm thinking of
True.
whether do you know much about that demographic of whether they are, used to opening email, I think text is pretty strong, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm thinking even my mum, she'd be texting and stuff. That's pretty ingrained now. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Email, she isn't, but then I'm not saying that she's the only one. I mean, I've got her partner, for example, is completely au fait with email, and we
Yeah.
communicate quite regularly on that.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking of like this whole idea of, I'm almost thinking like there's going to be a contingent of people who almost need to be educated physically about this stuff. Because like if my mum was in Morrison's, say, and there was a free, I don't know, some sort of almost like they dressed up a workshop in some way that helped people who were in store understand how to transition online. And there was some sort of incentive involved in it. Like if there was a discount, I know my mum would be there straight away. This is Mrs. Bargain Hunter of the century. She'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to get 20 pence off my rolls.
Yeah.
I'll get that training to go online and buy my wine or whatever." Then instead, I was just thinking of how people would innovate in terms of educating people to go online, who are currently almost maybe. There might be a contingent of people who are risking going to the supermarkets during lockdown because they're so scared of doing it online.
Yeah.
And it's reaching those people, I'm thinking as well, is that would be almost physical, like the brand really wants to help that demographic,
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's a great idea to be able to have some sort of, like you said, some sort of workshop area within store that can be where they can go and ask Q&A sessions or even set up the account there and then with somebody from that supermarket. That would be pretty much like you do when you maybe go and get you go and buy a mobile phone. Perhaps there's somebody there that you can go and speak to and set up your online account. They can walk you through your first sort of shop and show you how to do it. That sort of thing. It really is. They're going to need walking through these things. Just like, I mean, it's just a very different mindset, and it's just helping them to get to that point. And I think in terms of being able to communicate with them, I think, like you said, some people won't be okay with email. And again, there's going to still be that concern around, security of things. So I think it's going to have to be a combination approach of things like SMS and email and in store. And then ultimately, if you're covering off all of those bases, you really are sort of providing a great deal of support. And ultimately, then you've got those shoppers continually shopping online. And if you do all the things like the sort of things that I recommend in terms of making sure that you improve user experience and that you can optimize conversion rates, you're going to be making sure that those shoppers are also increasing their basket spend. So hopefully it's providing that good service for them, but it's also meaning that your business obviously still gets to be able to churn out what it needs to to work online.
Yeah. I mean, interesting. You mentioned about the experience online. I mean, obviously from Segmentify's point of view, it's reasonably straightforward from apart from that demographic a minute, in the sense that you're trying to provide, the most relevant journey for them, if you like, quickly as possible. So that kind of makes sense. But then, with that demographic, are there any things that pop out in your mind in terms of what the user interface, what the UX or the journey might need to look like to provide the kind of experience that demographic would get, or it would appeal to them?
Yeah, great question.
Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think there's probably not enough known about it yet. So again, in the sort of area that I work in, it would be something that I would look to do an A and B test. So there might be something where you do, you work with a partnership with one of your retailers that you've got really good relationships with, and you explain and you say, look, we've got this new customer base. Can we try some of these different ways of working with them, whether it's simplifying some things, whether it's maybe to increase the size of the print on a page. When I look at one of the things my mum loves about reading a Kindle, the fact that you can increase the size of the print, things like that. Could you run some very sort of quick and easy A and B tests, and then you'll really have a better steer on what's needed. So it's probably an area we haven't really done much focus on. I would say most businesses haven't done. So I would imagine, with a quick bit of A and B testing, you could get over literally a few weeks, you could get some really insightful data from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, as you say, because it's much more physical in that sense, I think even physical focus groups as well would go back to old school, people sat in a room and chatting to them about, market research around what do you need on the website?
Exactly.
If it's like this, is it better than that? Almost physical A/B tests as well as tech ones, maybe.
Yeah, find what they need. Yeah,
because the interesting thing is, I mean that demographic, that cohort of people, it's not getting smaller, and it's not going away in inverted commas. It's getting bigger. As we take, being frank, we take longer to die, right?
Yeah,
now,
population
than we used to. We're getting older. Yeah. So actually, it's a demographic of people that we do need to really, really consider in terms of. And again, not being cutthroat here, but from a revenue generation perspective, which all of us brands are clearly trying to do, it's all about growing revenue.
Yeah.
Then it is a demographic of people that we need to take note of, and COVID's kind of accelerated that, I think, which is kind of the whole point of what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah.
But I think there's some really good food for thought in there, and really interesting. I mean, in terms of people getting in touch with you, obviously at the moment, you're running your consultancy, and you'd love to continue that and gain more project work and so on. And COVID has kind of put a bit of a slowdown on that. But one of the purposes, as I mentioned, of the show is to kind of gain some exposure here with your expertise. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you in terms of putting in, implementing plans around this, or just chatting to you wider about consultancy around their brand, what's the best way of them to get hold of you?
Sure. Yeah, I have my website, which is www.eConceptConsulting.com, all lowercase, all one word. Or you can find me just on LinkedIn, searching Natalie James or eConcept Consulting, and my contact details and further information are there.
Okay, excellent. So that's eConceptConsulting.com, all one word. Yeah. And obviously LinkedIn, Natalie James. That's with an IE at the end, isn't it, for Natalie?
It is, yeah.
Is that normal? Actually, there is no other way, right?
Well, actually, over here in France, it often gets an H stuck in there, which is, they don't even pronounce H's over here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I often get an H stuck in the middle there. So, nope. It's
good. I've saved myself slightly there. Quality. Okay, great. So one last thing to ask you. I love to ask this of all my thought leaders for our audience. Could you give them one kind of, juicy sort of nugget to go away with from the chat today?
Sure. So really just to summarize, as we've said, that there's been a huge shift in shopping habits and a shopping demographic as well due to the pandemic, and a big shift to online. So I want businesses and brands to really challenge themselves to say, what are we doing to make sure that we are tapping into these new customer base? What are we doing to support them? And make sure that you really do push yourselves. That way you will set yourself and your business up for success in the future.
Yeah. No, sounds perfect. Well, thank you so much for that, Natalie. That was a great chat, and thank you for your expertise. And I do hope that you get out of Biarritz safely soon. Obviously, enjoy some sun and sea in the meantime. Clearly, but thanks very much, and thanks guys for listening. It just remains for me to say that if you haven't done so already, please do sign up at segmentify.com/podcast. That way you'll get hold of all the podcasts that are already announced. They're already available there, and any future ones that we're bringing out, and clearly to be able to support people like Natalie at the moment in particular, whilst we're in lockdown and COVID and so on. If you've got any questions or any particular topics that you want us to research and talk to people about, or of course, if you want to be involved in the show, please email me anytime at phil@segmentify.com. And just have a great day, guys. Stay safe and strong. Thanks again, Natalie. And we look forward to seeing you all again.
Put us to the test and let us prove we can drive more revenue for you. Sign up for a completely free proof of concept or split test against your current provider, set up and optimized by our team within a few days at segmentify.com/demo.